Let's talk about what accessing universal flow or universal consciousness looks like to create something that's absolute genius, absolute magic, and just flows through you and feels so good. It actually lights you up to create it. Hi, I'm Erin Werley. I am the author of One Truth, One Law. I Create and Lightworkers 101. So this morning I was working on a new blog article and I was so excited to sit down and write it. I had set intentions the night before that it was going to flow out of me. And when I sat down to write, it was flowing out of me. But what wanted to come through me was something much different than I had planned and expected. And this has happened to me many, many times now, so I understand what's going on. Because when we sit down to create something, to write something, to speak something, it's either going to come from our programming, our subconscious thoughts and beliefs, or it can come from universal consciousness, universal flow. And this is God source consciousness, and it's our highest truth. It's what we all truly are and can access at any time. But to do this, we actually have to recognize when it's our subconscious thoughts and beliefs that are talking to us. And instead of saying, yes, I agree with you, we have to say, oh, that's just that subconscious programming. I don't have to listen to that, and simply go back to what wanted to come through you. So what this looks like and why everyone is trying to avoid it in the creative world is a big, imagine you had a canvas and a bunch of paint is splattered on it and it looks like a huge mess. And you're not quite sure what to do with it. And we want order, and we also want a guarantee before we start that things are going to come through perfectly, which is why people outline in advance of creating something. They want to be sure that their time, energy, and efforts are not wasted on something that doesn't come through and can be used. So yes, we can technically access universal flow to create the outline. And some of the best authors and composers and all of the things do this, and that's fine. But we can go a level deeper and say, I don't need an outline. And this is what I've chosen to do. I don't have an outline for this talk today. And what happens is when you don't have an outline, you're allowing your frequency to essentially be the beacon, the homing beacon that calls the right people in. So since I don't have an outline, I know that not everyone is going to love the things that I create. That there's going to be people that say, I don't like that. This doesn't it's not giving me the points step by step, quick and easy. That's what I'm looking for here. And sometimes, even when we're at a high frequency, we still want that just give me the steps quick and easy, and that's fine. But I know that if I'm meant to give out steps and make it quick and easy, that's how it's going to come through. And if I'm not meant to do that, then that's how it's going to come through. And either way, as long as I am being true and authentic to the flow that wants to move through me, that it will come out exactly the way it is supposed to. And my job in this process, as well as your job in this process, is simply to trust that these ideas, concepts, words, music notes, whatever it is, paint strokes are flowing through you the way that they are supposed to. And in the end, it will make sense. Now, I've experienced this over and over and over again, where I'll be writing something, la, 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 la. And then all of a sudden, I'll know I'm supposed to write a sentence that doesn't make any sense with all the sentences I've written previously. And my subconscious will come in and say, ooh, Erin, you can't write that. That doesn't make any sense. You'll lose what you've been doing. Just back up, erase that sentence, and we'll go back to what we were doing. And then this is where writer's block comes from. But writer's block can happen in any medium. It doesn't have to be through writing. It's any sort of creative time that we lose access to the flow because our subconscious mind comes in and we say yes to it. So, and that can look like our doubts and our fears, right? Our assuming that things need to come through us in a certain way. The reason that I can do what I do is I have accepted and made peace with the fact that things aren't meant to come through me any specific way. That universal consciousness and flow comes through in divine ways that are often way above my pay grade. And it's not my job to edit as I'm creating. It's my job to simply put down all the crazy thoughts that want to come through me in whatever order they want to come through and just allow that to happen. Now, when we do this, that writer's block clears up. It clears up and it goes away and it doesn't come back. But it takes a lot of trust that you aren't a crazy person typing crazy thoughts and that you're not the only one feeling this way. I can guarantee you that this is how it works. This is also the exact same path that opens up your psychic gifts, because accessing universal consciousness, universal flow is simply accessing the quantum field. It's accessing essentially what we can't see physically yet, but wants to come through for us. And this is the more that we trust and say or do the crazy thing that wants to come through us, the more trust that we are showing in the universe and the more we get to see and experience, because the universe doesn't want to overwhelm us with more than we can handle. So it's like a faucet. Our psychic gifts or our ability to access this genius flow. And we think we want the faucet turned all the way up. Turn it up. I want to know everything. I want to see everything. But what we may not have experienced yet, but I've experienced, so I can tell you, is that can be incredibly overwhelming. When you start to see in truth all the ways this world is an illusion, it breaks your heart. And you have to move through the pain of having your heart cracked open so that more light can come through. And so the universe, God's source, tries to drip it in a rate that doesn't completely overwhelm us and having us run for the hills. So sometimes that rate is too slow and we have to ask for more, and we have to sit down at the computer or sit in front of the canvas with our paintbrush and just be willing to put something out there. Just be willing to type whatever wants to come through until something is coming through that feels authentic and good and true to you. So what you do is you have to allow yourself to release all the ideas, the matrix programming around what writing is supposed to look like. And I'm just using writing for an example, but you can substitute it with whatever your creative outlet is. So you've got to just release it, let it go, and say, I may have been taught to outline before I write, but I choose to no longer need that. I choose that I can sit down and what is meant to come through me will come through me. Now, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be an editing process, but the editing process is completely separate from the creative flow accessing process. So that means after everything has flowed out of you that wants to flow out of you, you take a break and you come back a month later, 3 months later, whenever it feels right and good to you, then you come back and you do whatever editing feels right to you. And there are times that I do editing and there are other times when I don't do editing at all. And this is fine. There's no right or wrong here. You have to allow yourself to be led in the editing process as well. But the point is to move out the programming that it's not safe to write the thing that doesn't make any sense down. because this is the only way you access that genius part of you. That's it. If you're editing as you go, you will not access it and you will shut it down. You will shut it down. I've done it. I know it. And it sucks and it hurts. And so we don't want to do that anymore. What we want to do is recognize as we're writing, oh, I just had an idea to write this down, but I chose not to write it down because I didn't really know how that made sense there. So then you back up and you write it down. And so awareness is always the first step in any sort of major change. And awareness here, when you are blocking your own inner knowing that wants to come through and allowing yourself to let it come through, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it feels naughty or bad. Your inner knowing is not naughty or bad, but sometimes it'll feel that way because it's so much more free than what we have been programmed to believe we are supposed to be. And so that through this process of accessing this incredible inner flow, you access so much more freedom within you, freedom to be who you really are, freedom to, and who you really are is God, source, and body, but you're also an individual soul with a blueprint. And the more that you trust as you are led, where you're led, and what wants to come through you and be said and experienced through you, the more you return to who you really are, the more you become who you've really always been underneath all of the programming. So even if you just are going to journal, just for no one who's ever going to see it, practice this. Practice accessing universal consciousness. And if you have no idea how to get started, write down a question you'd like an answer to. Just write down the question. And then underneath that, just start writing. And you might start writing and say, I have no idea what the answer is to this question. Erin said to do this, so I'm going to try it, but this is really stupid and I don't like it. And then saying, okay, well, now I'm getting awareness that I don't believe this is possible. So now that I have awareness over what my belief is here that is blocking me accessing the answer, what I'm going to do is choose, because I understand that I am God's source embodied, and through that, I am the commander of my body and my life. So I'm going to choose to I move out this programming. I dissolve it from my system. And I choose to create within me, to activate within me that I believe and I know that I am capable of accessing universal flow and receiving the answers to my questions. And you write all this down. You write down the fact that you're dissolving this old programming. You write down the fact that you're activating the new programming. And then you start writing again. I'm going to write and I'm going to see what wants to come through me. And maybe it'll be the answer to this question. That would be so cool. I would be so excited to receive the answer to this question. But if I receive the answer to this question, you just write. You just write. And this is simply one form. This can be done as a conversation that you speak out loud and record on a voice recorder. It can be done, again, through art, through music, through so many different avenues. It can be done with food. Food is actually a great example. Let's look at a recipe. Say there is a recipe for a pineapple upside down cake. And you're going to bake this pineapple upside down cake. And you're following the recipe to the T because you have heard the programming that you must follow the recipe to the T or it won't bake right. And all of a sudden you have this inner knowing that you should tweak the recipe, that you should do this instead. And you've never done anything like this before. You're not a chef. You have no formal training. You just have this inner knowing that's coming through you that the recipe should be tweaked. And you have a choice. And the choice is to say, shut up, inner knowing. That's crazy. That doesn't make any sense. Obviously, and this has 5-star reviews out the wazoo. So obviously I shouldn't be making any tweaks. And I don't know what I'm doing anyway. So I definitely am not making any tweaks. I don't want to mess this up. And so then you bake the cake as usual. And for some reason, it didn't taste the way that you thought it would, but whatever, you did the best that you could. You followed the recipe, you followed the rules, you did everything that you were told to do. And so, oh well. Or take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm going to make this change. I'm going to trust my inner knowing, even though I have no physical evidence to back up the fact that this will work. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this change. And you do it. And you make the change, and the cake ends up being better than you could have imagined. And it's interesting how we think there are formulas for things because we've been taught there are formulas for things. And we are taught that these formulas are perfect and can't really be improved upon, so don't waste your time. And that's the most ridiculous idea or program, but it's so prevalent and it was all drilled into us in school. So exciting to understand that we have the power. And this is, I don't know if you can hear it, but my daughter, who is 6, just went into her bedroom and she is screaming into her pillow, which I was just thinking about this earlier, how proud I am of her for, and this is a total aside, but how proud I am of her for doing this with her emotions, that I have taught her that when she feels anger, instead of yelling at her brother or yelling at her parents, going into her room and screaming into her pillow. Because this is so important with anger, that we aren't just trapping it inside or giving it to others. Instead, that we're recognizing when we feel angry, stepping away and moving the anger out of our system. So if we feel anger, so important and vital that we yell. We're often taught, and this is sort of like it's almost a reverse matrix program, that when we feel anger, we should take deep breaths to calm down. All that really does is trap the anger inside. None of our emotions are bad or wrong. And this is, okay, I just have to stop for a second because this is such a good example of when you're creating something and you think you're supposed to be talking about one topic, but the knowing comes through, move over and talk about this. You can either trust it or you can say, shut up you, I'm working on this, don't bother me. And do you see how I trusted and completely switched gears? And then it ended up making total sense. And when you get to it, we see how me totally switching gears literally created this situation that made so much sense. So even though I couldn't see how interrupting what I was talking about to talk about my daughter yelling into her pillow would make sense in the end, I just knew that it would make sense in the end. And listen, it did. It did. How incredible is that? So now the question I ask is, do I keep talking about the emotions and how we discharge them out of the body so they don't get stored energetically within us? Or do I wrap up this video? Okay, so what I'm hearing is wrap up this video and I will make another video about that I will link here somewhere, I guess in the description. Sending you so much love. Thank you so much for spending this time with me.